Hello, welcome back. For those of you who are new, my name is Lindsay. I am a knitter and a natural dyer and just general maker living in the Pacific Northwest with my husband and my daughter and our 2 cats and our small flock of backyard chickens. This is episode 14, and October of 2017 was the month of my first podcast episode. So we are coming up on a year of doing this right now. And I was just reflecting on that the other day. I don't normally do like anniversaries when it comes to blogging or things like that, but this whole YouTube thing has been transformative. I feel like I'm way more connected to the knitting community than I ever was. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has come to my little space here and has kind of become part of my knitting community. The last time I recorded an episode was late August, and we were just about to wrap up the natural dye knit along. That has ended, and the winners have been chosen. There was one winner on Ravelry and one winner on Instagram. They were announced and their packages have been sent out. I had so much fun with that whole thing that I think I would love to host another natural dye knit along sometime next year. So it sounds like there is some interest in that. So we'll just have to see. I think maybe doing it from spring to fall is kind of the perfect time because there's so much to harvest. Details on that to be determined. It'll be a while. We'll probably start it well after we have our baby. But who knows? I'll probably keep knitting and podcasting if I can. Speaking of pregnancy related things, my last episode was very short because I was in the midst of the first trimester and not feeling very well, but I have to say I'm feeling so much better. I'm about 17 weeks in at this point, and we found out the gender a couple weeks ago. We're having a baby girl. Matt and I both kind of had a feeling we were going to have 2 girls. I don't know why, we just had a feeling. So we're very excited, very, very excited. And she'll be due sometime around March of next year. So because I'm feeling a lot better, I've been able to pick up the needles and start knitting again. And I'm sort of knitting a lot to make up for all the lost time that I wasn't knitting during the first trimester. So that has been such a relief to be able to knit again. Natural dyeing, on the other hand, has been something that I've had to set aside for a while because I can't handle the smells. I tried to make a dye bath a few weeks ago with marigolds and I wasn't having it. So I'm going to try again this weekend and see if I can kick it back into gear, because once I get started, I get into a rhythm. But I've been kind of scared to dye in the house lately just because I get so affected by smells. So we'll see. Natural dyeing has become something that's a part of me, and I feel very sad to not be having it part of my daily routine. So the sooner I can get back to it, the better. So my first finished object are the Speedy Selbu mitts by Ellie of Skandir. And those of you who are observant may note that I actually missed a row of the green right here. It's supposed to mirror this side, but it doesn't quite do that because I missed. That kind of thing always drives me crazy because I don't ever notice it until after they're done. But these were really fun. I've had a lot of people ask me if these are beginner friendly, and I have to say I think she wrote the pattern specifically for beginners, and I am a beginner at this kind of thing, and I feel like now that I've done these I can do them all. Or I feel more confident to try, at least. And the only reason that I haven't cast it on for both of her September and October patterns, I love them. They're so cozy and yeah, just wonderful, is because I have had so many things on the needles that need to be finished, and I knew that if I kept doing other things that I was never going to get those projects done. And especially, I have one project that I wanted to finish on a deadline because it's a sweater for my husband's birthday. But I've seen both of her September and October patterns, and they are so gorgeous. I can't wait to start them. Yeah, Speedy Selbu mitts. Definitely try these. So after I finished the Speedy Selbu mitts, I went and finished the Aito Shawl, which is something that I started back in, it was either late June or July, and then it got too hot. We had really hot weather pretty much all summer, and it was awful. I like to try to keep knitting in the summertime, but there was no way I was knitting on this in that weather, even in air conditioning. So the minute it started to cool down again, I picked it back up and I finished it. And it is so huge. There's no way I can show all of it at once. I'll try to do a close-up of it later. But I really, really love the way that it turned out. It is the biggest shawl I've ever made, and I actually haven't put it on since I've blocked it, and I think there are a couple ends that are sticking out that I need to deal with. It's like a big blanket. It's massive. And so cozy. Honestly, I'll probably end up wearing it in the traditional shawl way, like this, while outside or while I'm knitting, or yeah, things like that, just because it's so big. It's basically a blanket. The night that I finished it was pretty cool outside, and I after I finished it, I just wrapped it around myself and laid down, and I was watching a show, and it was so cozy. It took me actually a couple days to want to block it because I just wanted to wear it. This is how much yarn I have left. The pattern actually calls for 6 different colors, but when I bought the yarn for the shawl, I didn't have the pattern in front of me, and I couldn't remember how many of these cakes I was going to need to get, so I just got 5 thinking that was the right number. And you may recall from a couple episodes back when I was talking about this that I had to get kind of creative with the transition from this dark color to the next color, and so this whole section is kind of a blend of both of them. In hindsight, I wish I'd kind of sketched out the shawl and exactly how the colors transition, so I could get kind of a visual clue of how things were gonna need to be faded. So I could have done a little bit better job than this, but it's such a small section of the shawl that it doesn't really bother me. It's just that it's so abrupt compared to the rest of the color changes. From the dark to the next color up is huge compared to the rest of the colors, which are fairly close to one another. So I would recommend that you stick to colors that are close to one another like this if you want to have that subtle color fade effect. Also, the second to last color was the color that I used the most of, but I still had a little bit left over. I got a little bit worried for a minute that I was going to run out, but I still had plenty left. You can see that the change from this part to the rest of it is really, really subtle. So if I could redo anything, I would just have ensured that I didn't get colors that were so far apart, or I would have gotten a color that would have made this transition a little better rather than trying to kind of blend the two together, because it didn't really work out that well. But I don't care. I still really love this thing. It's going to be a staple. I can already tell. I love this piece, and I know that you can find the pattern in Lane magazine. Lena? I don't know, people say it differently. Or I know that it's also available for individual release through the designer Melody Hoffman, who I always seem to have a pattern of hers on the needles because I love her designs. I think I'm just gonna wear it. It's pretty chilly today. So after I finished my Aito Shawl, I decided I wanted to go ahead and finish my husband's birthday sweater, which you may recall me talking about from the last episode. This is called Barrett from Veronic Avery, and this is how the pattern looks. So this is a pattern that calls for Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, which is a woolen spun yarn. And the yarn that I used is Knit Picks Wool of the Andes Tweed, and it is a worsted spun yarn. And I probably would never have knit this using a worsted spun yarn if it hadn't been for the fact that my husband, as you may recall in the last episode, I talked about how he purchased this yarn for himself thinking that he would want to teach himself how to knit, but he's a really busy guy and he doesn't have time. And so I set out looking for a pattern specifically to knit up that yarn because I didn't want it to go to waste. So despite the fact that it is a worsted spun yarn, I feel like it looks really good on him, and it's very heavy and drapey. But I honestly think that it's going to work really well for him because he gets so cold in the winter that he cranks his office up really, really hot. And so I've just been wanting to knit layers for him, basically sweaters, KALs, fingerless mitts, things like that, so he can stay warm without heating up his office, because then people have to go in and see him and they're always sweating. And whenever I go and visit, I'm just like, oh, it's too hot. So I'm hoping that he will enjoy this sweater. And we've tried it on him, and I will try to insert a clip. The only major change that I made to this pattern is that I made the garter hem at the bottom into a ribbed hem that matches the sleeves, but I left the neckline garter, so you can see that's the bottom hem. And I just like ribbed hems better than garter hems for some reason. I thought about doing that for the neckline too, but I actually really like the way that the neck turned out. And I didn't end up changing anything about the neck. I left it as written. The only thing that I want to mention is that the sleeves, I got gauge for this pattern, and it might just be because of the way that the yarn knits up versus woolen spun yarn. But, you know, the instructions say to knit so much for the cuff, and then to go like 2.5 inches or something before you start the increases. And when I did it that way, the sleeves ended up being way too long before you start the sleeve cap, which is done in this ribbing, which is really cool, by the way. I like the way that turned out. So I ended up ripping back the first sleeve to the cuff, and then I started the decreases right away. And then it was the perfect length at that point. Also, this pattern was fully seamed, and I really like the kind of structure that it gives to it, especially with the worsted yarn because it's so heavy and drapey. If I were to knit this again, I would probably use the Brooklyn Tweed Shelter or another woolen spun yarn, but I am quite happy with how this turned out, and I got it done way before Matt's birthday, which is sometime next week. So after I finished my husband's birthday sweater, I figured I could give myself permission to cast on for a quick knit for the baby. And for some reason I've been very motivated to knit for my 3.5-year-old right now too. Anyway, I knew exactly what pattern I wanted to make. It's the little Acorn Mitts by Ashley Yousing. I think that's how you pronounce it. Ashley of Woolful. So I made one pair for my 3.5-year-old. I haven't blocked them or anything yet. And you may recognize this yarn because I've used it for a cardigan for her in the past. And it was just a DK weight, non-superwash merino that I dyed using madder. I haven't been able to replicate this color since, which really bums me out because I love it and it's so autumn. But hopefully I'll be able to do that sometime this fall because I'm very inspired to create autumn colors right now and I'm hoping to get back into my dyeing. But I still have quite a bit of this left, and so I've been wanting to make little accessories. And so these were the first mitts that I made for my older girl, and then I made a second pair without thumbs for the baby. Oops. And oh my gosh, how cute are these? I'm actually a little worried that I might have made them slightly too big because I can't remember how small baby hands are. But you can see they're quite a bit smaller. And it's okay if they're a little too big because I did these ones in 1x1 ribbing hoping that you know, they could fit her for a while. You may recognize this yarn too because I used it for socks a while back, and this was dyed with walnuts and then modified with iron to make it a little cooler. My daughter has been more and more interested in my knitting, and whenever I'm knitting, she comes up to me and she says, "What is that, Mama? Are you knitting?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Can you knit me some socks?" Which I am planning on making her some socks, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I made her these and I was like, "These are for you, let's put them on." And she goes, "For me? Thank you, Mama." It's so cute. I love that she's starting to kind of understand that I'm making stuff for her and that she knows what knitting is. And yeah, these are adorable on her. I don't know if I can get her to hold still enough to take a photo of them on her hands, but we'll try. One thing I wanted to say, for some reason, I feel like a lot of people are having a hard time finding the pattern. I shared an Instagram photo and people were telling me that even though they were looking up the designer's name and the name of the pattern, they were having trouble. So I just wanted to show you, this is what the picture looks like for the pattern page. I will put a link in the pattern down below in the down bar. So if you are interested in knitting those, hopefully you can find them because they're there, I promise. So I don't actually have any works in progress started yet, but I do have a couple of projects that I'm going to get started on really, really soon. The first is for the adorable teddy bear sweater by Petite Knit. So for this pattern, I'm using my hand-dyed yarn. It's a superwash merino that was sent to me by a viewer, and I dyed it with avocado. And I thought that it would be perfect for a baby knit because superwash, really soft, and yeah, easy to clean basically. And then I'm going to be pairing this with a mohair silk blend that I dyed up a while back using birch bark. It's kind of a peachy pink color. Sort of hard to capture it. So I've already made a swatch for the two yarns together and it's coming out like this, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Just this really pretty kind of heathered look. It's so soft. I was a little bit worried that mohair would be itchy, but I honestly think that I could tolerate this without even having an undershirt under it. So I may end up making a garment for myself with a mohair silk blend paired with like a non-superwash merino. Probably do like a no-frill sweater or something with it eventually. I've been looking at that sweater thinking that is an awesome basic and I want it in my life. But yeah, very, very happy with this color and with the way that that's kind of pairing together. It's really pretty, really soft, really pretty fabric, and I think it's going to be perfect for the bear sweater. I did the swatch using a needle size up from the needle that it recommends, and it's slightly too big, so but just slightly. So I'm going to have to go down a needle, but that needle is occupied with my Norte cardigan, which is another work in progress, and I've been working on it, but I'm still very much on Sleeve Island, I guess, and hoping to be done by the next time that I talk to you guys, because I want to wear that. And it's a cardigan, so I can, whether I'm pregnant or not. That's the thing about knitting sweaters for myself right now, is that there's no point. Last but not least, it's another project that I have in mind, but I haven't started yet. And it's for a pair of socks for my daughter. She keeps coming up to me and saying, "Hey mom, can you knit me some socks?" So I'm like, okay, sure. What color do you want? And she says, chocolats, which means turquoise. And so I was looking through my stash, which is not very big at all, and I found this yarn that I got several years ago actually, from my sister-in-law. And it's this Plymouth Yarn Co. Happy Feet. Really pretty color. I guess it's more of a teal, isn't it? I don't know. Turquoise is the lighter one and teal is darker, right? I don't know. But I showed her this yarn and she was like, for me? So I do want to knit her a pair of just really basic socks to see how she likes them. But the thing that I'm kind of hung up on is the fact that all of her store-bought socks have the grip glue on the bottom of them, and I feel like, I don't know, toddlers slip and fall and hurt themselves all the time, and I would never want her to fall because of hand-knit socks. So my question is, for those of you who have knit socks for little kids or toddlers, have you used glue, like some kind of grippy glue for the bottom? And if you have, what is a brand that has worked for you on hand knit socks? Yeah, I guess I could just use some tips regarding that. And also, I could do a vanilla sock pattern, but I kind of want to know some numbers. For my socks, I always cast on 64. For her, I haven't got the slightest clue how many I would cast on for. So I'm hoping that maybe someone can give me a tip on a pattern that they've used, or maybe just give me a formula for how many stitches you've casted on, or something like that. Yeah. Cold tea. I actually really like cold tea, depending on the tea, I guess. So that's it for me today. Yeah, I'll see you guys the next time. Bye.